Hey everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, filling in for Mr. Pacitti on SmackDown Live's Graded. But don't worry, he will be back very, very soon. But SmackDown was a very interesting one. Lots of stuff happened, not necessarily in terms of matches, but in terms of angles, storyline development, plots. It's like bloody Game of Thrones on the road to WrestleMania. Get ready, because it's time for SmackDown Live Graded. So we start the show with Shane McMahon, the hottest heel in the business and the best wrestler in the world. He came out having turned heel on The Miz at Fastlane in Miz's hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. But I was really interested in this. I thought, can Shane really get himself across as a good heel? And as it turns out, yes, he absolutely could. He's a McMahon. What else were we expecting? So Shane gets in the ring. The trophy's there in the ring as well that he won back at the World Cup in Saudi Arabia. He gets Greg Hamilton to announce him as the best in the world twice. The second time with more feeling, which is just wonderful. And I was already thinking, yes, this is like old Shane McMahon back in like the Attitude Era when he was a dastardly little heel. It was really nice to see. Shane came across as very deluded here, which was exactly the right way to go. He truly believes that he is the best in the world. He said that he's sick of helping people get ahead in this business. We don't know what he does for everybody on a daily basis behind the scenes, but that all came to an end at Fastlane when he battered The Miz in front of his dad. He said it was liberating, which is lovely. He then challenges The Miz to a match at WrestleMania, which I'm genuinely looking forward to. Can't wait to see it. Maybe there could be a stipulation involved, who knows, but either way, I think it's going to be tremendously entertaining. Not like the match of the night or anything, but a fun bit of the show regardless. He says that it's going to be awesome. Oh, Shane. Oh, Shane. I'm going to give this a B+. Really enjoyed Shane's work here. The delivery was a little bit muted, I felt. Maybe less enthusiastic than it would have been were it a young Shane from back in the day. But the content of the promo was absolutely superb, and I enjoyed the little touches as well, like the trophy in the ring and everything. So yeah, opening the show with a strong B+ segment. Let's move on. Next up, a big 8-man tag team match between the Babyface team of the Hardys, Ricochet and Aleister Black against the Bar, Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura. This match was okay, especially towards the end when it started to throw in some like fun high spots here and there, but it never really hit the heights of some of the Aleister Black and Ricochet matches that we've seen recently. It was still decent, but there were probably too many bodies around for it to really develop into something special. But none of it really matters anyway, because before the match could come to an end, the New Day hit the ring, cleared it out, and stood defiant, standing up for Kofi. He was there as well. It was all three members of the New Day, and I thought, yes, this is what we wanted. Kofi finally showing some balls, taking matters into his own hands. And yeah, SmackDown, to be honest, was getting off to a really exciting start. As I say though, the match itself wasn't anything special, but the New Day run-in was what was needed. So I'm going to give this a B. I thought the action was fine, but one thing that I don't like is the idea that faces are always friends with other faces, heels are always friends with other heels, and you can just throw them together for no real reason. I was a little bit confused when Rusev and Nakamura helped out the Bar at Fastlane, for example, and I just feel like it would be the sort of thing that would work if they fleshed it out a little bit more with a backstage segment or two. But regardless, it was still a fine segment. Faces and faces don't have to be friends. Heels and heels don't have to be friends. I'm going to calm down. It was still pretty good. Next up, we get Randall Keith Orton, who hits the ring and cuts a bloody fantastic promo on AJ Styles. It is wonderful. Orton gets criticised and has got criticised throughout his career for being boring at times. I understand where that comes from to a degree, but I think that when he's really given the ability to cut loose and say what's on his mind, or he's given a script that seems to reflect what's on his mind, his give no F's attitude, I think that that's when Orton really comes into his own, and that's exactly what happened here. He said in 2002, when he was making his WWE debut, AJ Styles was in high school gymnasiums wrestling for $10 a night. Oh, heel on them, Randy. Heel on these clowns. He says in 2004, when he was becoming the youngest ever world champion, AJ Styles was in bingo halls shaking hands with his opponents. A very clear shot at Ring of Honor there and the whole Code of Honor thing. Love it. He says that in 2005, when he was wrestling The Undertaker at WrestleMania, AJ Styles was in Florida getting a tan with Dixie Carter. That's just so good. Honestly, I don't know if you can tell, but I loved this segment. I had a huge grin on my face watching it all the way through. It was wonderful. AJ Styles comes out and pretty much gives as good as he's got as well. His response is fantastic too. He says that Orton would never make it in the independent scene. He's made for WWE, but he wouldn't make it through the route that AJ came up in, especially not with this, and then he mocks his pose, and with a knockoff diamond cutter. Oh, there was so many shots being fired here. It was absolutely delightful. AJ also says that if Orton's looking down on him because he came from the independent scene, he needs to take a look backstage because he's now surrounded by AJ's indie peers, which is true. It's literally true. Orton says that this isn't the house that AJ Styles built. It was built long ago by Randy Orton. AJ's just renting a room and rent's due. And he points at the WrestleMania sign. And yes, from not being interested in this feud at all, I'm now totally invested. It's the Indies versus WWE. It's going to be great. Can't wait to see what sort of crazy RKO Orton manages to hit Styles with. Can't wait to see who wins as well, because it does seem quite unpredictable. So this segment gets an A. Can't think of anything wrong with it at all. Loved it. So much fun. And now I'm excited for a match that I wasn't previously excited about. Next up, Asuka gets a match against Sonya Deville after her victory over Mandy Rose at Fastlane. Sonya loses the match after they've grappled for a couple of minutes. Sonya loses the match because Mandy Rose accidentally pulls the apron and she trips on the apron. A reflection, a sort of opposite of what happened in the match at Fastlane, with now Mandy costing Sonya the match. But with Sonya, it looked like a genuine accident. With Mandy, it may have been on purpose, especially with the aftermath of the match, where Mandy was sort of unapologetic, let's say, and Sonya looked pretty devastated. But yeah, Asuka won with the Asuka lock. Correct decision in my opinion. I'm gonna give this a C+. It wasn't the best match ever, but the angle makes sense. The crowd were pretty dead for it, to be honest, which knocks off some points. But I didn't mind it at all. It sort of logically furthers the storyline. The one drawback mainly for me, though, is that Asuka needs something for WrestleMania. She needs an opponent, and I don't know what it's going to be, but the clock is ticking. Next up, Becky Lynch hits the arena. She comes in limping on a crutch, but she chucks the crutch aside. I was like, oh, the leg injury's over. But she was still limping as she came down to the ring, which, you know, I mean, I guess it's fair enough. She was still selling it over the past couple of days, but it was at least a relief in some sense to see her just ditch the crutch, and hopefully that's a sign that by the time we get to WrestleMania, the leg injury isn't going to play too big a role, if you know what I mean. We can still have an excellent triple threat between her, Charlotte, and Ronda without her constantly selling the leg. Becky says that she played Ronda like a fiddle. She got in her head. She made Ronda really want Becky at WrestleMania, and that's exactly what Ronda did. She fell into the trap and allowed Becky to beat Charlotte by getting Charlotte DQ'd at Fastlane. You know what? I like that. The story was becoming really convoluted. I know that Ronda wanted Becky at WrestleMania, but now that Becky's come out on SmackDown and spelled it out for me, I can forgive a few of the transgressions in the storyline. I still don't think the storytelling's been anywhere near perfect in the build-up from the Royal Rumble. Certainly not as good as it could and maybe should have been, but this did right some wrongs. Becky also calls Ronda a little weirdo, which is a delightful turn of phrase. Then Charlotte comes out and says, you know what, Becky, you may have been hot for 6 months, but I've been hot for 4 years, which is a cracking line. Fair play. They have a bit of an argument, a bit of a back and forth. Nothing really groundbreaking is said, but Becky gets the last word by saying, I think at WrestleMania, we don't need a queen, we need the man. I'm going to give this a B-. I was, first of all, on the positive side, I was really relieved to see a simple promo segment in this feud that has had so many, way too many twists and turns. It was nice to just see some simple, effective storytelling. But the reason it only gets a B- is because it came really soon after the Randy Orton and AJ Styles segment, which was along the same lines, two superstars with a microphone each having basically a promo battle. And because it was so similar to the excellent segment we just seen before, I do feel that harmed it slightly. Next up, a tag team match between Samoa Joe and Andrade against Rey Mysterio and R-Truth, the four men who are very much in the US title picture right now, with Joe, of course, as the reigning champion. Again, this was another example where I was like, faces and faces don't have to be friends, heels and heels don't have to be friends. But we'll just see what happens after the match, because this was a pretty good contest. The action was pretty good. All four guys have developed a really strong chemistry, and Zelina Vega and Carmella were doing a good job on the outside as well. The finish came after a double 619 by Rey Mysterio to Andrade and Joe, but then when he went up for the frog splash, Joe rolled out of the way, went for the Uranagi on Rey, but Rey rolled him up for 3, securing a pinfall over the US champion. But of course, this was a non-title match, but it's still a big development along the road to WrestleMania. Of course it is. Joe is obviously livid at this turn of events, but Rey has rolled out of the ring, so he's got no one to attack apart from R-Truth and Andrade. And he does, he beats up R-Truth, and then he beats up Andrade. Yes! Heels and heels don't have to be friends. They know how to do it sometimes, I'll give them credit. I'm going to give this a B. It was a short match, but a good one. And even though Rey got a pinfall over the reigning US champion, and I feel like a lot of times over the past few weeks, champions have been getting pinned in non-title action, at least in this case, it definitely did make sense. So yeah, it gets a B, no complaints from me. Next up, Bryan and Eric Rowan against Kevin Owens and Mustafa Ali. babyfaces and babyfaces don't have to be friends. They don't have to be... I'll ignore it, it's fine. This was a pretty decent match. It followed the basic formula, however, of the standard TV WWE style main event matches that we're used to seeing on Raw and SmackDown on pretty much a weekly basis, certainly on Raw. To its credit though, it was a little bit more fast-paced than those matches we're used to seeing on Raw, and a little bit more frantic as well. So it was probably a little step up from that sort of general vibe. Actually, I will give credit to Rowan, who looked pretty good in this actually. Has he been improving his skills in his time away from the ring? Maybe, who knows, but he did look quite sharp here. Bryan and Ali obviously have a terrific chemistry, which we saw at Fastlane, and they had some nice exchanges in this match. Nothing too spectacular, but you can tell that they just work really well together. And yeah, it was a decent match. Rowan eventually got the pinfall with that whole face slam thing that he does on Ali. I'm going to give this a B-. I didn't particularly enjoy Ali being beaten so quickly and decisively after such a strong showing at Fastlane, but it didn't ruin anything for me. It just took a little bit away from the match. So B- is the grade I'm gonna give. And finally, we end the show with the music of Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Vince hits the ring, passes Daniel Bryan on the way down, and they have a nice little heelish exchange. And then Vince gets in the ring and says he taught Kofi a lesson at Fastlane. He taught him a lesson in basically not being an idiot. He said, "Oh, I never said that Kofi was going to be in the WWE title triple threat match. I never said that." But I feel like he did. I feel like he honestly did. I can't quite remember, but if anyone knows exactly the wording that Vince used in that backstage segment at Fastlane, please do say in the comments below, because I'd love to get this cleared up in my head. I can't remember what he said, but I feel like he's lying about the wording that he used. The New Day hit the ring, and from the moment he steps through the curtain to much later on in the segment, Kofi keeps his eyes locked on Vince McMahon, and he doesn't talk for quite a while as well, but just stands there intensely staring at Vince. It's really effective from Kofi. Big E and Xavier Woods both take turns on the mic pleading Kofi's case to Vince, getting quite angry at points, getting quite logical at points as well. They present a really good case, but Vince just shoots it all down and says, why does he deserve any opportunity at all, really? And it's a bit... It's very in character for Vince being a dick and a heel, but it does lack a little bit of logic for me in that, why is Vince singled out Kofi? Kofi's not a hellraiser like Austin was back in the Attitude Era. He's not someone who Vince, as the owner, would realistically not want to see as champion. There's no real reason for Vince to have this vendetta against Kofi, but give, for example, Mustafa Ali the shot at Fastlane. That doesn't really sit well with me. Vince says, you know what, Kofi, you have wrestled here for a long time. You will be in the Hall of Fame one day, but only as a member of the New Day. And now you're an older guy. It's very clever of you to get these two younger guys doing all the dirty work for you. And then Vince also says, oh, I met with Daniel Bryan in my office earlier, and he said you were a B+ player, which is fantastic, because Daniel Bryan has just gone back on everything he once believed in and is a total hypocrite, and it's absolutely genius. Kofi then cuts an incredible, passionate promo, one which I can't really do justice in recapping here. Do definitely seek it out on WWE's YouTube channel and watch it, because it was phenomenal. He basically just gives this rundown of why he deserves a shot. He says he's been so loyal to the company, he's dedicated his life to the business. He's never been trick-or-treating with his kids because he's never been around on Halloween. It's just so effective and so emotional and so convincingly done by Kofi as well. And Vince says, right, well, here's what you've got to do to get a title shot. Here's what you've got to do. You have to beat this man. Then Randy Orton comes out and he goes, then you've got to beat this man. Joe comes out and he's like, and also you've got to beat this man. So basically, Kofi has to run a gauntlet next week, and he has to beat, and I'll list all the heels he's got to beat now: Orton, Joe, Bryan, Rowan, Sheamus, and Cesaro. That's 6 people. It's interesting. Don't know what's going to happen, but it's a bit of an odd one. To be honest, I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to see what happens. This segment gets an A-, an A- for me, yes. Kofi's performance was unbelievable. I just feel sometimes with Vince, when he's in a promo segment, especially a big important one like this, I'm kind of, you know, driving fast without a seatbelt. I'm quite scared, like, oh God, is it going to go off the tracks? Is he going to slip up and say the wrong thing? But Vince largely held it together. It was a very effective segment, and I thought it was a big, strong ending to SmackDown. And I'm excited for that gauntlet match next week as well. So time for an overall grade. I'm going to give this week's SmackDown Live, fittingly, as Kofi Kingston is and as Daniel Bryan was back in 2014, I'm going to give it a B+. This week's SmackDown was a B+ player. Nothing spectacular in the ring really at all. The wrestling, you could argue, was a little bit disappointing given the wrestlers and the talent they've got on that side of the roster, but at the same time, the storyline stuff was pretty much excellent across the board. So if there's any time of year that storyline stuff is allowed to firmly overshadow in-ring stuff, It's in the build-up to WrestleMania. B+ for SmackDown Live, well done, and I'm pretty excited for next week, to be honest. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.